Hey gang, welcome back to Joe Daddy's Garage. Today's video is part 33 in the 68 Mustang fastback build known as Fangled. Now in the previous video I was addressing some sheet metal concerns, trying to relocate some holes as I did with the connecting piece that goes from the rear apron to the cowl. I moved that out a little bit and I showed you why I did that, and I know it's a big improvement. I also made some filler pieces that go on top of the aprons. And so these dynacorn panels, they make them with that insert to take the place of the shock tower. And so I wanted that to look a little cleaner, and I feel like it turned out really nice. Now I've been doing other things as I make progress. I want to make sure everything fits. And in that last video, I had pulled the engine out, struggled with it a little bit just because of the tranny lines, but also knowing that there will be other pieces and accessories attached to that engine. So I'm going to go a different direction. I'm going to be a little proactive here, and I'm going to modify this core support. Let me show you what my idea is. So being that this is the factory style core support, it kind of gets in the way whenever you're trying to pull a big engine out and get it from under the transmission tunnel, all that stuff, and I don't think it's going to be beneficial to leave it this way. So I feel like I'm going to make some cuts, and to do this I need to reinforce whatever I cut out. So what I ended up doing, I have another sort of a parts car outside. I cut out the top portion of the core support from that car, and this is going to serve as a reinforcement piece for this piece. Now the idea is I want to cut it somewhere on line here so that I'm not into this hole. I can tell you these two holes here are for the horns. So you got one on this side and one on this side. There is a hole here which is like a punched hole. I don't know if it really matters what it's for. And then this hole, I looked on another car that I have and there's nothing in this hole. That doesn't mean nothing goes there, it just means there was nothing in the hole. So I don't know that it's that critical, but I'm not going to mess with it. I just want to cut kind of beside it and split this open. Now the idea will be that I will take this piece, and I'm not going to use the whole thing because I don't need the whole thing, but if I slide it into this piece, let me get it lined up here, there we go. If I slide it into that piece, it can act as a reinforcement. And I'm going to draw some lines on here so you can see what I'm talking about. So what I see happening is making a cut basically right about here. And that would be in line with those little tabs that hold the radiator. So if I do that, this section here, the whole center section, is now removable, but we want to be able to put it back in place. I don't need to use this whole centerpiece because it has the nuts that you would use for mounting the center brace. It doesn't really gain anything. The center section is solid. So if I put this up here, get it back in place where I think it should go, and let's say I cut this piece out here somewhere and right here somewhere. That gives me this leg, and what I'm going to do is I would weld this cutoff piece to this piece. So I'd have two welds here, probably a weld here, maybe one down at the bottom, however that plays out. And then over here I would put two bolt holes and one bolt hole here, and I could put a nutsert in there and have it all lined up, and when this is squeezed together, this piece, which is now part of this piece, this creates a tongue or recessed piece that slides into this, and you can put in at least 3 bolts. Might even put one on the bottom, I don't know yet. But that's my design, and I feel like that'll be plenty. That'll leave this hole where it's at, won't interfere with these 2 holes for the horn, and it won't change the location of the hole for the radiator. That's all part of this structure still. So that's the plan, and I'll do the same thing on this side, weld this all together. I'll have to modify just a little, that punch hole that I talked about. I'll eliminate that or make it bigger so that this one can be, if it needs to be used, it can be used, but I don't see it being used. I may even, now that I think about it, I may just plug that off, smooth it up and plug it off. If we need to add a hole, I can do it later, and it'll make it a little cleaner. So do that, add a couple nutserts out here, and we have what will be a removable centerpiece. Let's get started. So to get started on the core support, I want to get the fenders out of the way. Probably don't really need to do that, but it's going to come into play later because I'm going to be working on the side of the car, as you'll see further in a video. So I get out my safety equipment, gloves, earmuffs, face shield, and I have drawn a line on there as I showed you earlier. So I'm just going to cut that off. And I've got several of these little air tools, and this is an older one that I've had for a long time, and it's made to be, say, a little less aggressive. So I have another one. I'll show you later in the video that it's I think a Chief brand from Harbor Freight. It is high powered and doesn't stop for much. This one allows me to be a little less aggressive and take my time in making these cuts because I want it to be really straight when it's all said and done. I'd like it to have a minimal gap between the end piece and the center section that I cut out. So here I'm just test fitting that other piece to make sure it's all going to line up the way that I want it to. And then I take some measurements where I want to make these cuts in relation to the brackets, let's say for the radiator, because I want to eliminate them from this piece but maintain them on the original piece. So I draw out these lines, get out the Ziz wheel, and start cutting. And this, just take your time. You don't need to be in a hurry when you're doing these sort of things. I like to go through this process and make sure that I'm not getting ahead of myself. So I make these cuts, cut off these end pieces, and then from there, I do more kind of test fitting. I want to see how these pieces interact with each other and how they're going to overlap. So here, the center of the back piece, I'm just fitting it in, lining up the holes in the front, and then I'm going to draw some lines on the end, basically where the intersection is going to be, and then I know I can cut off that much of the material. So it'll leave me with about 2.5 inches on either side of the cut lines for the front piece. So test fit that, cut off this one, test fit that, and I see that things are going to work out okay except for that punched hole. And so I'm taking the Ziz wheel here and just grinding that off. I'm not going to need it, and I just want to smooth it up to make sure that that filler piece slides in there nicely and doesn't have any interference, which it now does. So with these short pieces clamped in, and as I have here, W, going to weld that. So I need to make some holes here, 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 and I may even put one down in the bottom. Get that as stiff as I can make it. But with those clamped on, I can bring this up into place and put some clamps here. And that's going to work. Now, this still has a little play in it. It's going to flex because, first of all, the core support is not welded in yet. And secondly, this is just clamped. So there's room for movement where the slit is, where the actual cut is. So I'm going to punch some holes at these locations and then weld those together, come back up and retest fit, make sure everything's right. But to do the holes, I'll just show you. I have a punch tool that I've shown you before, and it is super nice. Makes all this a lot faster. and that is this thing. I have a link down below on my Amazon page. So I'll punch a couple holes in here. See if I can get one way in there. Oh yeah, that'll work. And I might as well put one down here too. See if I can get in there. Go in this way. So there's a set of holes. Do the same thing on the other side, best I can. I'll bare that metal and start welding. So what I did is I set this piece up in place and I used my Sharpie and I marked where the contact points are. So I'm going to clean those up a little bit. And I'll put some weld through primer on these as well. But on the inside, I just kind of do the same thing to the holes. So I'll get some weld through primer on that, let it dry, and then come back and weld it together. So, put these together. Go on my reference marks that I drew earlier. That should work out pretty good. Why have clamps if you don't use them? You turn the heat up just a little bit. Okay. Now, of course, I'll grind those down. If I need to add any more, I will. Add any more weld. But get the other one in place and repeat. Like I said, I'll grind all that down and touch up if I need to. I can see that hole that I talked about previously, while it's in line, it's a little bit off as far as being center to center. So nothing I can do about that except I can make the hole match. So I'm more worried about the exterior hole than I am about the interior. So I'll trim down the inside of the new piece. So now that I have all these welded and ground down, looking good, then put it up in place and put some clamps on it. Now you end up with a little bit of a gap, which you can't get around very easily, simply because of the thickness of the cutting wheel that I used. So there we go. So now that's a lot more solid. Still not completely solid because, again, it's not welded to the car yet. And you may ask yourself, why didn't you do that first? Well, if I made a mistake after I had welded all of this to the frame rails and aprons, and I made a mistake doing this, I would have to take all that apart if I was going to replace it with another one. So at this point, I'm happy with how this is, even though I'm still not going to weld this in yet. Now the next part is going to probably be a little bit for me to get this done, simply because I've been using this Nex-Tac riv nut system. Probably seen me use this before. This thing is really cool. Hand operated, a bunch of different attachments, metric and standard. But the problem I have is I'm basically out of what I'm going to use quarter 20. I do have some metric that are similar in size, but I'm not going to use those. So I had to order some more quarter 20 riv nuts. So I can't put this in together just yet, but it's the same situation. I'll be drilling holes straight through both pieces at the same time, and that'll locate where I'll put the riv nuts. So I could do that, but at this point I really can't do much else until I get those parts in and they are on order. So since I have to wait on the riv nuts to come in for that front section, I'm going to address something that's been bugging me for a while. Now, we all know that most of this car is built from dynacorn parts. We also know that it is tough to get everything lined up like you think it should. So there's always variables. Now the reality is the sides of this car came pre-assembled, and you really can't change, I mean you could change some of that, but everything worked out. The dimensions are good for the sides, and whenever you put them on, you know, I ran into some problems where I had to take this reinforcement bar that goes underneath the roof, I had to actually shorten it to make it fit. And then also we had to fight with, or I had to fight with, getting these rain gutters at the right angles and tucked underneath the roof in the right way. Now, here's some things I want to show you, because when you look at all of this back here, and you can see the alignment is on where it needs to be. The roof is the same, on the same plane here, this from the sail panel to the roof. Everything here lines up like it's supposed to. And when I was putting these quarters on, I noticed that it just didn't quite want to do what I wanted it to do. I ended up with on a little bit of a gap that I didn't like at the bottom, and I've gone so far as to refitting the doors, or at least the passenger side door. So the reveal is good. At the bottom here, that line is all good. And even this line up here is good. The fender is not set properly. Like if I lift up on the front corner, it moves the rear section. I've shown that before in other videos. When you raise the front section there, this gap gets bigger at the bottom and it cleans up really nice. However, I've been looking at this and looking at this, and I need to fix it. And I'm not sure what happens with dynacorn or whoever makes the panels, but right now, if I push on this door a little bit, this is on the same plane and this corner is on the same plane. It comes down here and it doesn't want to line up. You can see there that the main line going from the door into the quarter is not the same. And you flow on down and it's a similar situation right here. And I've measured this, I've looked at this, and I've even looked at the fact that there's a bit of a gap down there at the bottom. And I didn't want to weld this together yet. I was holding off because I kept rolling this around in my mind and thinking, what is going on? Because nothing's off as far as dimensionally. Everything is right. However, I don't know for sure that the quarters are stamped the way they 100% should be. And part of that reasoning is when I come back here, this part of the quarter panel is a little forward of the wheelhouse, meaning it doesn't line up with the rocker panel quite right. And so when you look at all of that, like I welded the back section, I know it's right and I know it fits and it's not going anywhere. But the more I look at this, the fact that there is a space, let's say right here, sorry I got the camera a little off, a little bit here, and the fact that these lines, when you look at the door and the fender, the line flows like it's supposed to. And I'm really, I mean, there's a variety of ways. I've done this on the other cars. I've cut quarter panels, modified things. But what I'm thinking about doing, and this may sound crazy, is I'm thinking about cutting it up here. And the reason for that, if I cut here, and I'd have to cut, I don't want to mess with this body line. I would have to cut, bring it back. It could be at an angle, it doesn't really matter. And then come down into the arch. What that'll do is allow me to take this section and bring it down slightly. And the end result will be this will now come back over top of the wheelhouse. It'll drop both of these to the right location, and it'll fix up this gap a little bit more on the bottom. So call me crazy, but I'm not afraid to cut something to make it work. And I've measured this, I've looked at it, and the thing is, whenever I built all of this, I measured everything. And it's a similar situation actually on the driver's side as well. But everything is square, everything is in the right spot as far as I can get it. You may look at that and say, well, why couldn't you lower the quarter panel? Well, you can't. It ends up that it's on top of this. It's on top of the inner structure. You can't make it go any lower physically. And that's why I put it exactly where it's at, and I'm like, I need to come up with a remedy. So I'm going to cut this. I'm going to make a line. Probably cut it somewhere in there and come down and allow that section to drop. So stay tuned. This is where the fun begins. I start with my somewhat weaker air tool, and I realize I need more power. So I get out the Harbor Freight, the Chief brand, and quickly zip through that line. I want to make sure that I'm still straight. I don't want to make a curve or some, weird angle. So I had drawn this out with a straight edge, and I come around the corner and cut the B-pillar line, and then I finish cutting the forward section there, and then I cut this line in the back. There's a variety of ways you could do this, but this to me worked out really well because it kind of maintains the same angle and shape of that wheel well radius. So once I see that it's going to drop this down, I realize this is going to work. I know it's going to work. But I take a second look here, take the face shield off and the earmuffs so I can focus on what I'm trying to do. And I see that the angle now, or the alignment with the door, is right where I want it. So here, what I'm doing is just, as you see, stripping down the door. There's a lot of paint on here from previous work. All I want to do is make sure I'm not misreading the body lines. So just take a few minutes to clean this up with that tool. I forget what it's called. There's a name for it, but I got that from Harbor Freight. Body conditioning tool, I think, is something like that. And these things are so handy for getting rid of paint and even, rust and stuff like that that's on these cars. Just take your time. You don't want to build up heat in any of these panels and cause a warp or something that you'll regret later. So worked out really well. Blow out all the dust. All right. Now that I have cut this off, and I cleaned up the door because I wanted to verify the actual peaks on each one of these. And there's another thing I'm going to show you in a minute that I don't like about these quarter panels. However, by trimming that down, or cleaning that up and cutting this loose, you can see now these are on line. The gap here is minimal up at the top. I don't know if you can see that very well, but it's minimal. So I can just press this in for the most part and it'll fit and just weld it back together. But I want to show you something else that bugs me about this, and I have to address it because that's how I am. So I can get the camera at a good angle here. I'm not very low, but on the doors, the factory doors, this lower section, angle down a little, this lower section is curved. It actually has a curve. The quarter panel does not. And this has always bugged me. When you put this in place, there is no transition. And I've shown this in other videos on other cars. This doesn't work. Even if you get the corner right, this part just doesn't work. So if I show you another perspective, and I use this tool, you've seen me use it before. This gives you the shape. I forget what the word is for this tool. Profile tool, maybe? And you come in and put it right on and push in, it takes the shape of the door. So there it is. Make sure I got that exactly where I want it. Yep. So nice and tight on the door. If I compare that to the quarter panel, you can see that gap. So if I come across this top or the bottom, it needs to be in, like that. See the difference? No, it's a minor thing, but it makes a difference in the build. So I have to come up with a way to curve this section. And there's probably several ways you could do it. One, you could cut it along the edge here, give it a place to open up. Another, you could cut it on the edge out here, take this piece off, or cut it maybe a slot into it so this piece can push in. So I haven't decided exactly what I'm going to do just yet, but I want to make that the right shape before I put it on here. I mean, I could do it afterwards, but I want to address it ahead of time. The other thing is the B-pillar also is pretty much straight on the reinforcement. So I may modify this slightly so that this part has a place to go. I just like the details. I like things to fit like they're supposed to. But see, I can't go in any further. It's hitting down here as well. So that needs to be fixed. Otherwise, everything else is right on. It's right where I want it. So let's figure this out. So as I look at this, I realize it's probably easier if I just cut a slit here, because this just needs to go in. I've got this little notch on the bottom. That's from the door, so it doesn't affect this, but it allows me to see what I need to move. And I know it's minor, I really do, but it shows up at the end. So let's make a cut. Now what I'll do is I'll take a hammer and gently nudge that to try to get that shape. So let's see if I can make this curve a little. Now that I'm doing that, this is wanting to bow a little bit, so I may have to just separate that. It's got a little section up here that I could cut loose. Kind of makes sense. It's changing shape, so it wants to fight this. Let me cut that real quick. Oh, never mind. Never mind, it actually popped off. So that's fine. You can see it curving now. I'm not being aggressive. I don't want to be too aggressive. Get a different hammer. Now you can see that has more of a curve. All right, we'll see how it fits and go from there. So I hope this shows up well on the camera. After making that adjustment there, just a little massaging, now everything lines up. Remarkably, all it needed was about, I don't know, 3/16 here at the front. Drop it down. That's the door sitting nicely on top and lining up everywhere else. Got the curve the way I want it, and even down here, it all lined up the way that I like it. So, next step is welding this together. Now this, I'm not going to make like a filler or anything. I'm just going to slowly tack this back together and make it blend smooth. But you can see how much just a little tiny bit makes a huge difference. You know, with this way up high before, it would have been ugly regardless. So now, I'm very happy with that. Time to weld stuff together. Now I know this is going to be a longer sequence here, and I want to emphasize taking your time when you do this stuff. So these little brackets that I'm putting in, those are designed to hold panels that you've cut loose like that. So it has a little T-bar on the inside, and it slides that tongue through. You put the bar through the tongue, and then you tighten up the clamp, and it holds it in place nicely. It works really well if you've got a thin, you know, like a thin cut line that you work with. So a Ziz wheel is probably about, you know, the width that it represents. So I start off by tacking that first corner, and I really just wanted to anchor that section because moving forward I'll be making adjustments with the way the scoop is shaped at the end. So I continue to make these little short tacks, and you'll see here I'm using this, it's a little screwdriver, and all I'm trying to do is make sure the panels are aligned to each other. So sometimes they could be slightly behind the other, and I try to make that adjustment. So if I take the screwdriver and stick it in the gap and angle it one way or the other, it'll flex those two panels into more of an alignment. So I'm just feeling it, making sure it's smooth, make sure there's no burrs. That's why I'm sanding it in between, to make sure there's not a burr that I'm feeling that's giving me a false reading on the panels. And then I continue on doing that adjustment until I'm happy with how everything lines up. So I'm going to put on some music and let you watch the rest of this. Now, I know watching me do spot welds and grinding is not the most exciting thing, but I wanted to show you what you can do if you take your time with the MIG welder. I also did a few spot welds. Then I would take the air hose and cool it down, do a few more, build that up a little bit, and then grind them down to see, to show which ones I had done. Because when I come back, I want to go in between, but if I don't know which ones I did, then I'm kind of guessing. It's easier to just grind them down a little bit, and then you know where they're at. So, at this point, this looks really good to me. It's still going to take a skim coat of filler, you know, regardless. There's no way around that. I mean, there are people like Apex Restorations on Instagram. He is incredible. He can really make this totally flat, but I'm going to end up putting a skim coat on it, and that'll take care of it. Now, it also corrected this lower section here because this corner was trying to come forward, and that didn't help, and this corner was high. And now everything is on line where it needs to be. There's a shadow there, so it's kind of throwing it off a little bit, but I'm happy with all of that. So what I need to do is do these welds on the inside here. Pretty easy to get to those. Well, pretty easy to get to, I should say, but probably take the tire off to do it really well. And then I want to address this forward section. So right now this is not welded on yet. This is still loose, and part of my reason for that is the way this quarter panel is shaped. And it's, as far as I know, it's correct. You've got this tiny bit, believe it or not, tiny bit of a radius right there. And the rocker panel is flat. It doesn't have that. So I pushed this corner out even with the rocker panel. And I'm going to leave it like that. I don't know that I want to try to do anything else with this, because if I try, I'm not going to reshape this. It doesn't make any sense. This is going to get seam sealer along here anyway. So as long as it, to me, looks good in this corner, this little bit of seam sealer or a little bit of overlap isn't, it's trivial. It's not going to make really any difference. Now up here, this section is not, you know, pushed in yet. So that isn't working. My stick isn't working. If I push in, you'll see now that that fixes or lines up all the way across even, and I like that. And the door actually has a little bit of a reveal to it as well. So when I push that in and push in the door slightly, you get the same effect. So that's good. Also, I haven't pushed this in yet, and what I will probably end up doing is welding starting back here on the inside and get this fixed so it doesn't move. And then I may work the same coming forward, like push this in and weld the base, and once that's solid, then I can come up here and flex this part in if I need to. So I have all of these already prepped, and you can see how much better this lines up. Let me open this door all the way. But you can see how much better that flange overlaps now. You know, it's really weird to me that the way they make these quarter panels, you would think, hey, they should match the factory, but they really don't. I mean, there's some variable here that throws them off slightly. And as I've talked about it, I think I've talked about it, this quarter panel, basically you have to rotate it around center. Like, you can't lift this back section without creating a gap here if you're trying to correct something here. So you have to rotate basically off the center of the wheelhouse. And if you don't, like I said, you'll get this weird gap. But even if you do that, now you're going to shorten the length here. So the quarter panel would end up moving forward underneath the roof. And then that throws off your window, that throws off the angle of the trunk, that throws off the angle of the bumper, all those sorts of things. And it makes more sense to me to do this. And I think that worked out really good. Now I'm going to go to the other side of the car so I can show you what it looks like from the inside. Maybe, I don't know if I can get in there good. Let me see. So down at the bottom there, the angle is good where it meets the rocker panel, so I can just weld that on. And then I did grind down the welds on the inside some. Not really necessary. I mean, it's trivial at this point. But if you wanted to, you can do that, and then you could even skim coat the inside of that with filler if you wanted to kind of hide the work you did. But I'm not worried about that. I'll treat that on the inside, and this may end up getting some sort of lining on the inside of the panels. I don't know if we're going to do lizard skin in that area or not, but I'm pretty happy with it. So I'm going to get the rest of this welded in, and that's going to take care of the passenger side, and then I'll have to do something similar to the driver's side and get it done. But this is good progress. I want to make sure I show you this. This is that Yes Welder DP200, and currently I have 30 thousandths wire, so I'm going to stay with that. And then you can select your gauge of metal. So I have it on 18 gauge. I think that's going to be fine. And then 75% argon, and the material is steel. And what you can do, normally when I set this up, it'll default to like about 98 amps. So I usually turn it up a little bit. So you can do that however you want and fine tune it. But I really like the way this is set up because it takes some of the guesswork out of doing this stuff. So what I plan to do now is weld in that seam or the overlap, let's say, for the quarter panel. And I've already welded this corner on the inside. I didn't want to try to film it. It'd be kind of difficult to get the camera set up. So while I pressed this part in with my leg, I reached around and I welded the inside. So now that is really good. I like the way that looks. Shouldn't be as difficult to get it the way I want it to look at this point. Grab my ever popular reading glasses. We all need those now. And my gloves. You may also be able to see, I don't know, you can see this gap right here. That's from where I cut this, and moved this. So really, there's a little bit of movement down here yet, and it's not going to affect anything up to this point. You can see it's not really moving any of that. So I'm going to weld these in. I don't know if you can see very well, but I'm welding in a circle. So I start at the edge of the hole and just kind of walk it around and then work my way to the center. If you do it right, it works really well. The weld looks really nice and finished. So I'm sure I like these hinges that I have. I may end up getting different ones. But right there, that's all super close. So I want to make sure this is lined up. Let me grab a couple of paint sticks. And all I'm going to do now is I can take the paint stick and put it across the door right there, look at it, and then I can take a second one while I'm doing that and come down here and see how that plays out. And that's really close. Now these doors, this isn't really actually smooth. It kind of does a in and out because it's a scoop. So it's not intended to be a straight line, let's say, all the way back. So if you put the stick on, you're going to find it gets a gap because there's no choice. But I can come to the edge and make sure that it's all good. Use this other one. So if I get this set and hold it in place, that's really close. Now, it's not to say there won't be a need at some point for some filler, to make this a perfect transition. But this really takes away a lot of that guesswork. And I can bring that in at the bottom right there, and that cleans that up. So that's really pressed all the way in. Let me see. Yeah. Get that. Yeah, I want this part out a little bit. Just a little. Okay. Even though I've done this, I'm going to do it again. Now I want to get this, if I can move this in just a little bit. Bring this in just a little, if I can. Oh, yeah. I don't like these hinges are not very good. So I can weld this top one in for sure. Yeah, that's nice. I'm listening to AC/DC Jailbreak while I'm doing this. Probably my favorite band. Now I'm going to try to get that in just a little. So I think that's going to work. At least in this section. Then I got to get this in slightly. That all looks good right now. I can stay right there. So, it's going to take me a little bit. I'm going to take this piece, which I cut off, and it's going to get reattached to this. It's going to be hard for me to film that while I do it, just because I have to hold it and get it and keep it in place and everything. So I'll show you what it looks like once I get that in. Yep, more grinding or sanding or blending. You know, in the aircraft industry, you would say you were blending because you were working on aluminum, so you weren't really grinding per se. There you can see the little welds that I put together to hold that edge and keep it nice and straight. So I'm going to knock all that down. It takes time, you know, go back and forth, use different angles, different positions, and smooth that up so it looks really nice. And later on, this will get a simple coat of filler to help smooth up any flaws that are there. I want to show you this because I changed out these door hinges. Now these, I'm assuming, I don't know. I have no idea. There's no name on them. There's no markings. But they were with the car whenever I started. And they look new. And they are pretty tight. But they're too tight. Like this doesn't want to roll correctly. And I also had bought a set of ACP hinges. So I have a set for both, you know, the driver and passenger side. Now, I swapped those out and I made some adjustments. I moved the door slightly aft so it tightened up that gap a little. There's still a little concern up here, but this, as we know, this is a factory door. And so they never fit perfect anyway, but this can easily be addressed. A little bit of weld up here, maybe even down to this area somewhere in that section, and that gap is going to look fantastic. The alignment here, no complaints at all. Everything looks good. And as I was pointing out previously in the video about this section, that lines up nice. Gaps are nice. So I'm really glad that I cut that loose and made that adjustment. Now with the new hinges on it, it operates like it should. No clinky clunky sounds, no stiff movements. So I'm happy with that. I did finish grinding that edge of the quarter panel. That's all nice and tight. And then I welded the bottom edge together as well. So I'm happy with it. I really am. I'm going to clean up this door later. And I think there's one patch that I'll have to do down here in this corner, which is not uncommon. I've done that before. But I really want to keep this factory door. And right now I don't think there's any other issues, maybe a couple little dents and dings. But I wanted to get back to this modification. So right now I'm waiting on hardware. I ordered some more riv nuts and they haven't shown up. You know, they're all coming from Amazon, and Amazon is using the post office to get them here, which makes it even worse. So I'm not sure where they're at. They said they're coming, but they're not here yet. So I'm looking at some ideas, because right in this area is where I want to put two, I believe, riv nuts, and then one on the face. I've also clamped in this piece of angle iron just to make sure this was square, because there is some flex to it, as we know. So if I put in two riv nuts and then at least one in the front, that will make everything nice and snug and look good. I also have some hardware in order for putting that together. I'm not going to use regular bolts. Now, a thought was expressed to me about how do you make that sit flush all the way across. Because once you put in the riv nut, it kind of expands or raises this section. So what I mean is, when you tighten that down, something has to give. Either this piece of metal comes up a little bit or this piece of metal goes down a little bit. And I don't know that it's that big a concern. However, I want to get ahead of the curve on that. So I'm going to do something and show you an idea that I have to try to recess those rib nuts a little bit to make this sit nice and flush. So I like to get creative. And this is what's left of that piece that I cut out of an old core support just to get those pre-made sections. And this is going to represent where I'm going to put the rib nuts. So if you look at that, it has a shoulder on it. And it's not super thick. I mean, it's pretty thin stuff. But if you put that on there, it actually makes that sit up a little bit, right? So I started digging around, and I had an idea. I've got some, I always hold on a little piece of like angle iron and stuff I've cut off. And I thought, well, could I put this behind here and kind of joggle the metal? And that's not a good idea. Just not going to work. You know, I was thinking about making like a section here kind of depressed, and that's making me depressed. No, that won't work. So set that aside. Then I thought, well, how can I dimple this metal? Because the problem is, well, if I had like a hand dimpler type of tool, I could probably do that. But I started looking around thinking, what can I use? So I had this piece of pipe. This was like, I don't know what it was from. It had a, apparently it was like maybe a spark plug removal tool or something that I had, and I would never use it anyway, but it had this end on it with these holes, and I cut it off. The reason for that was I was initially thinking, could I take a socket and put underneath this, set it on something rigid, and just take another socket and drive into it and create a dimple. But the problem I ran into with that is this, and what I have here is a piece of a bucking bar that I used to use when I was at Delta. And if I put this socket up on top, give you a little more different perspective here. If I were to put that socket up on top, well, it's too thick to get over this because this doesn't have a square opening, and the curve would be fighting it. So it would never go in deep enough. So that's what I decided. I'll use that. Take that little end off of that pipe, and then it'll fit over this. I can scoot that out, and then take another socket and drive it into that. Let me angle that a little better so you can see what I'm saying. So I'll just kind of go sideways here. If I did this and knock this in, and I think it's going to work, but what I want to do is I'll prep this with the alignment of where I want to put the two rib nuts. And the compressor kicks on. But what I would end up doing is drilling the hole size for the rib nut and then center it over this ring and punch it and make it drop. So I'm going to try that. You can watch along if you like. May have to get a thinner even piece of metal or wood to work with. I don't even need a piece of wood. Maybe I can just do it without it. So I have to make sure I don't go too big on the size of the rib nut. That's close. I think this is just a step drill that I got from Harbor Freight. There is one that comes in the kit that is more precise. But I hate to use it up on a piece of what would essentially be scrap. So there it is, right? So I have that located. I wonder, I could almost maybe just put that over top. Put that inside and just use the rib nut to make the dimple. That could work. Let's find out. You know, I'm glad I have the compressor outside, but it is kind of irritating to hear it run, especially when I'm trying to film something. There we go. All right. Yeah, that might work. We're going to find out in just a second. So get that kind of centered up. You know, I think I need a smaller socket. Or I could even take and make like a, if I really got technical, I could make a punch that had a sleeved, like a shallow center or narrow center. And you use a punch, but this is not that critical. So here we go. I need more noise. Okay, here we go. That's working. I think it's working. It's creating a depression, but maybe not exactly how I wanted it to be. Let's go back to the first idea and do it with the socket. A little experimenting goes a long way. I'm going to go wider on the socket. Oh yeah, that's going to work better, I do believe. And remember, this piece is going underneath the other one. So yeah, that created a dimple. And I know this is beat up and not the perfect shape, but that's going to work. I'm not going to put this one in here because this is scrap. I don't want to waste this. But I'm going to do that on the other one, on the main piece. Yeah, that's going to work. All right, now we know. So I think what I'll end up doing is making sure I have a good edge distance from the end of this piece. I'm not worried about the inside so much, which is roughly where I'm at with these two marks. I will drill a hole straight through this piece and the lower piece, both sides, and I'll make sure my dimensions are the same, and that'll give me the location for that riv nut, and then I can take this apart, step that hole up to the size I need, and make some dimples, and that'll be good to go. So I want to make sure these pieces are lined up, and I'm going to use a smaller diameter bit, like maybe an 1/8 inch, to get some pilot holes. I don't want to start off with a big drill bit and maybe misdrill the hole or have it at a weird angle or something like that. So I'll use the 1/8 inch, and then I'll step up to something a little bit bigger just to verify, you know, that the holes are where I want them and make it nice and clean. Once I have those holes established, I take this back off and I know where I'm going to make these indentations. So I'll go back over with this part to the vise and set up the little kind of indentation kit that I created and whack away on this thing. So I want to make sure that all the holes are good, and I'll do these first two, and later on I will do the forward hole, the hole that goes from the front face. So I get all these established, and once I'm happy with these, on the one side I go to the other side and do the same thing, and it all works out really well. So I'm going to show you this tool that I've been using, and it's been very, very helpful. This Next Tack, I think, is the name of the company. And so I step up the hole, or step up, you know, using their step drill to get the exact hole fit that I want for these rib nuts. I know I said nut search as well, but basically it's the same thing. Nut search is probably one brand name, and rib nut is probably another. But either one, it's the same product from what I can tell. So I get those in place, and then I select the size that I need, which is 1/4 20. And this tool is kind of, it's kind of universal with all these pieces you can piece in or fit in. So you got to slide this collar back and thread in the plunger section, and then that locks it in place so it won't rotate. Then you put the front cap on, and that acts as your resistance for the flange that is on the rib nut. Now I set it out with a bit of a gap so it's not so hard to squeeze. You do it in short steps. You can't do it all at once unless you had like an electric one. It just wouldn't work. So I just walk that in slowly. There you can see it's compressed. And then I reset and do the other side as well. Since I only have 2 of these right now, I'm just going to do the 2 outer ones. And that way I can at least screw this in place and you can see what it's going to look like installed. I do have hardware coming. It should be arriving probably by the time this video is done editing and listed. But I set that up in place, and then I step up. Whoops, drop the bolt. I step up the hole there to match the 1/4 20 bolt that I'm going to use. And I didn't want to get ahead of myself, so I always take my time and make sure these pieces are going to fit like I expect them to. And I also knock down the back edge where there's some burrs in the way. Well, it appears I am not going to have the other nut search by the time this video is over. So there's the top ones indented. There's the one in the front, and this is going to work really good, I think. So put this up in place. Now I have these bolts here. I'm not going to use these specifically. These are just ones that I have laying around. 1/4 20 stainless steel, and with this nice and snug in place, these are going to be great. So I get these started, and I'll tighten those down. These are way too long. I do plan to use stainless steel, but not these. I've got some shorter ones on order, and I actually have a different style of bolt that may go in here. I'm undecided at the moment, but this is going to serve its purpose, and that's going to work great. So for now, I just have to wait until I get these other inserts so I can put it all together and be done with it. On the back edge, there is a little overhang, and I will end up trimming that off right there just so it hides it. The only thing you'll see is this line and the hardware holding it up front. A little bit there needs trimmed as well. I think that's going to work really well and definitely make it easier to set the engine in, or if it needs to come out later, make it easier for that to happen as well. Making progress. Pretty happy with it. I am feeling really good about the progress on this car. You know, that quarter panel's been bugging me for quite some time. I had suspected that's what I was going to do, but I had to let it simmer for a while, roll around in my head, and I'm very happy that I did that. It looks so much better. It's going to take just a little bit of filler to smooth everything out, as is a normal build. You know, you always have that. And at the top edge of the door, I'm going to add a little weld, which will take care of that gap. And I've already adjusted things, fore and aft. It could go a little bit tighter if it needs to, but I'm not worried about that right now. I'm also very happy with how that core support turned out. That'll make it easier to install the engine, or if it needs to come out later, to pull it out. And a lot of people have come up with different ideas to do that. I think this is pretty clean, and it's going to look pretty nice. Also, there's a lot more to do. I need to work on like the deck lid, weld up a little bit of the edge of that so it matches the quarter recess better. I need to make sure I've got the extensions fitting correctly. I need to finish up the driver's side, work on the quarter panel there, make sure the door lines up. There's still a lot to do. And I'm not sure what the next video will be, but I encourage you to be here for that. So hit the subscribe button, hit the like, leave a comment, Let people know that I'm out here making these videos. But most importantly, I ask you join me on Patreon. My patrons support me in making these videos more so than anything I get from YouTube. And while I would like to just have videos go for them to see, most of them want me to make these videos so everybody else can see them as well, because it benefits so many people. So if you're interested, follow the links in the description box down below. And also anything that I recommend on this channel, whether it's a welder or tools, there's links down there for that as well. But that'll be it for this video. So until next time, take care of yourselves. See ya. That was going to be my ending, but my neighbor fired up a tractor or mower or something. Hang on. Things are looking good. I'm feeling better and better about how now... Things are looking good. I am feeling better and better about how this is turning out. Fixing these little things that have been bugging me is going to really help in the progress of this car. And at the end of it all, it's going to look so much better than... Things are looking good. I feel so much better about that quarter panel, about this front apron. Front apron? No. Things are coming along nicely. No. Things are coming along. No, I don't like things. I don't like things. But I'm really feeling good about how things are. But I'm really feeling good.